Welcome to CSE 270 Software Testing. I am Hunter Marshall, and I look forward to learning with you this semester.
There will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class.
Software testing is very important to any software project. Software testing is important since it discovers bugs and defects before the product gets delivered to the client, which guarantees quality for the software. It makes software more reliable and easy to use. Thoroughly tested software ensures reliable and high-performance software operation. Could you imagine what would happen to the product if it wasn't a high-quality, stable, and safe product? Software quality cannot be an exception, but a requirement for a business. Obviously, customers will prefer a quality software product, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Software quality can impact your product and business in many different ways. Do the work right once, and there will be less rework, less variation in productivity, and better performance overall. Software quality helps to ensure that products get delivered on time and that they get built more productively. Poor quality software is difficult to manage, and predictability decreases as rework grows, and you're more likely to have a late, low-quality product. So clearly, software testing is a big part of any software quality. Software testing is essential to any software product, but oddly enough, it isn't always prioritized. One of the biggest arguments that both management and software practitioners use is that there just isn't enough time for testing. Or, if it is the last thing on the schedule, it gets time constrained. But to be honest, those people end up causing a lot more problems in the future for themselves by not properly testing. So here, I'm on the modulars page in Canvas, or iLearn. So we are focusing right now on week 1, the first week. So here is just some information, orientation to online learning. This is good for you if you've never had an online class. I encourage you to take a look at it. Even if you've taken online classes, still encourage you to look at it. There's some good information in there for everybody. But what I'm going to focus on is the activities for this week. This overview business case is just a way for you to get some more information. Let's open that. So in here, it gives you just an overview for the week. You can read through this and get some information in here. The big things I want to point down here is the plan for the week. First thing you need to be aware of is the syllabus. You need to read that and understand what the expectations are for this class. I'm going to assume that you've read this by the end of this week. And going forward, I'm going to abide by the syllabus. So please pay attention to the grading requirements for this class, late work policy, everything in the syllabus. That would be important. Obviously, the whole thing's important because it wouldn't be in the syllabus otherwise. So the next part that we are going to do is to introduce yourself. And there's going to be a discussion board and an icebreaker, if you will, and you're going to introduce yourself to the class. The next part is going to be some reading that you do, and you're going to take a quiz on it, and that's that. Next, you have to find 2 articles for this week. On the web, find 2 articles describing the value testing activities bring to software project. So it can be any article you find, as long as it provides good detail on why testing is valuable to a software project. As you read the articles you found, be prepared to answer the questions: what is testing? What is the purpose of testing? And why should we test? Some of these may be pretty clear to you already, and you could answer these questions, but just keep those in mind. The last part for this week is the business case. So we're going to take a look at a business case, and we're going to build a business case, and you're going to understand what business cases are. In a hypothetical situation, we're going to make a business case for investing in testing. The business case must be based on 2 articles previously found. So that's where you're going to kind of tie in your 2 articles for this week is into your business case. I will go into more details in this stuff in just a minute. So, like I mentioned, the first part of this is going to be your reading quiz. You're going to download IEEE Software Engineering Book of Knowledge. You can find a link to this in the iLearn instructions for the overview. As you read, try to answer the questions that the instructions list out. So take a look at this quiz. You have multiple attempts. So the quiz is there to kind of get you just to focus on what else you need to learn. That's why there's multiple attempts, unlimited time frame. The second part, like I mentioned, is the icebreaker. Let's open this. So you're going to make some posts and you're going to reply to your fellow students. It's important to get to know who is in your class because starting week 3 onward, we're going to be working with our groups and you'll be able to pick your own groups. So you really want to get to know who's in your class, kind of introduce yourself, probably indicate what your time frame is on when you can work on activities with the groups, things like that. So in here, the instructions state, you need to update your iLearn profile if you haven't done that already. Add your first post by the due date, which is January 8th for this year. So check the calendar for the response due dates. That's very important. You're responsible for understanding and knowing when the due dates are for your work. We don't accept late work in this class. This is part of the syllabus. So please just make sure you know when things are due. So you can go ahead and click on this link here to get more instructions for this specific icebreaker. But it's pretty straightforward. We're not going to go into details about that. The last part is the business case, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time this week. So let's go ahead and discuss the business case a little bit. So it kind of gives you a little bit about a backstory. But essentially, you're being hired as a tester for this fictitious company called Help Inc. This product is in its second release. Surprisingly, there are no test teams for this first release. The development team did most of the testing, which is actually not uncommon. I worked with companies where the developers were the testers and there was no QA. So it's pretty standard. So moving forward, the resulting product had poor quality, prompting management to hire a dedicated testing team. So you have a bit of background information on what is going on and why we're looking for a testing team. So the first task is to determine how big the testing team needs to be in order to meet the quality targets. To build the team, you need to justify to management that the money spent on the team will be well invested. In other words, you need to determine the return on investment, also known as the ROI. So it would be best if you justify a large enough testing team to get the job done. The best way to do this is to identify the outcomes of an under-budgeted, resource-deficient, and time-constrained team. So this is where a business case comes in. A business case is essentially your proposal to your management, those higher up, on a project that you want to do, and you have to provide valid reasoning to do it. So we will go over that a little bit here in just a moment. So a business case is documented, used to convince a company to fund a new business area, like I just mentioned. So typically the business case discusses issues and limitations, mitigations, approaches, solutions, etc. You would base your business case on research from the internet. One good source would be documentation describing business cases or how to build a business case. There are many good articles out there. Another good source would be to find other testing business cases that were previously performed. But keep in mind, you have to watch out for plagiarism. So here is the business case template, if you will. I really don't like it, how they have this laid out. I actually built a template for you that you can use, and I have comments in there that hopefully will help you. The comments also do include the instructions listed here, so you'll have everything in there, and I'll provide that for you to use. If you want to do something else, that's fine. That's completely up to you. But the template is there if you want it. So let me go ahead and find my template. So here's the template. So it's pretty easy to follow. It's laid out pretty good. So we have the testing team case. That's just the title. We have the company logo here, which is Help Inc. You're submitting it to me, and then you're the submitter. It's being submitted by you, so you'll put your name here. Delivery method is obviously iLearn, Canvas, and the date submitted. So I have this layout similar to what you might find in a business case. So it might seem kind of weird that we have some of this information here. But like I mentioned here in this comment, in the real world, you often find more information than this for the business case identification, which is usually found at the top of the business case, just so you can identify what the business case is. So your first part is your project short description, or the executive summary. So in the real world, the executive summary consists of no more than one page. Oftentimes, you'll see it like within a paragraph, really. Only like 5-6 sentences. Kind of just a short description, like it says. So don't make that too long. The big thing here is that the reader should be able to clearly understand the grounds for the request just by reading the summary. So keep that in mind. It needs to be brief but to the point. I would suggest to keep it to a paragraph as much as possible. The next part would be your project background. So why is this project required? So if you were paying attention to the instructions, you would know that story already and why it's required.
Then again, maybe some of you have come to Hogwarts in possession of abilities so formidable that you feel confident enough to not pay attention.
So here's my notes here. So the instructions from the assignment state to start with the backstory and elaborate as you wish. In the workplace, you will be able to get this information from your manager when you get assigned to the project. For now, we will need to do a little bit of creative writing. No more than a half dozen sentences in a single paragraph. So in the real world, in software or hardware, you may have to describe the current implementation by describing the software and hardware used in the existing implementation. So, as well as describing resources required to maintain the current setup. So the important thing here that I'm stating is that you really have to understand what the current implementation is and what the bottlenecks are, why it's causing problems, why do we even have this business case that we're proposing. So, for example, you might specify that financial costs as well as the work hours needed for maintenance processes. So you may have to consider a measurement such as usage statistics. So what's the reason for this business case, and give valid data that they can actually look up if they really wanted to. Next section is the review of the options. Let's talk about the real world here. So in the real world, list the predominant requirements for your new solution. If possible, conduct a side-by-side comparison between the features of each product and those requirements. Ideally, the comparison should reveal your chosen option as the best possible. Some companies may require you to also explain the processes used to find the new solutions. You would have to briefly describe any research solutions as well as any detail, any product demos you tried. If you met with vendors, any vendor presentations or trade shows you attended, and other in-person research that you conducted. So just giving how you came up with your solutions and the different options that they can choose from is important. And it just gives management confidence when they see that you had performed substantial due diligence to figure out the best solutions. So for the instructions, specifically for this assignment, it states enumerate 3 solutions that management can select from. So for an example, one option might be to have only a single tester on the task. Each option should consist of a name and a short description consisting of a couple sentences based on options discussed in the resources that you found in your research. Again, please cite your responses. So the next part is your implementation risks. So risks, you're just identifying the risks that you've already identified for this specific project. So what risks are there for creating this testing team? In the real world, you'll list out the possible risks of this change, both big and small, as well as like mitigation plans for those risks. So for the instructions, it states identify 3 or more risks for each option. And that's pretty typical. You'll want to probably have a handful of risks associated with any project when you submit a business case. In other words, what could potentially go wrong if a given option was followed? These risks can be derived from the class material or from your research. For each risk, identify possible ways to mitigate them. Some mitigations may be technical, others might be social, such as specific communication channels. If you drew inspiration from class materials or from your research, make sure to cite this. So let's take a look at a real risk that could potentially be caused by a testing team. You could have a lazy developer who does their work really quickly or whatever and just kind of throws it over the fence. No real sense of communication with the team or with the testing team. And, the tester is there to just double check to make sure that the code is good, the quality is good, and that everything is working as expected. But, having that sense of, hey, I'm just going to throw this code over the fence to a tester without any real communication could slow the process because, if the tester is having to go back to the developer constantly saying, hey, you need to fix this, you need to fix this, and there's really no sense of responsibility from the developer, that could be an issue that has an impact on this testing team that would slow it down. So let's look at recommendations. For each option, include a short 2 to 3 sentence discussion of pros and cons. In other words, if you were to make a choice, what would you do? Also include a ranking of the options from most recommended to the least recommended. So let's talk about the real world in this case. It would be best to indicate why you ranked the options that you did and why you went with those recommendations. So there could be other options on the table that you didn't even bring up that you did research on and you decided that's not even an option. Some businesses might actually require you to list those options that you first considered but then threw out and indicate why you threw those out. So just make note of your recommendations, your priority for those recommendations, and which ones really you're suggesting. And that's essentially it for this week. That's it for this assignment. I did include some additional information down here if you wanted to take a look at it. It's just some other items that you might find in a business case. It's really not there for you to use. You might look at some of these and realize, oh, this information could be useful for my paper actually to kind of like hold up my argument for this testing team. Go ahead and use it if you like. But just note these are kind of just additional information down here for you. I did indicate just please delete anything in here that you don't need when you submit it, especially any unused fields down here. Also, make sure you resolve your comments, because if you have your comments still in when you submit, it actually shows up in iLearn or in Canvas. So I don't really care to see the comments. I just want to see what your final product is. Remember, you're being graded on professional paper, so it needs to be professional. Pretend I'm your manager and you're submitting it to me, because that's essentially what you're doing. Okay, and that is it for this week. So if we go back to the modulars page, that's everything. I forgot to mention for the business case, remember to include part of your articles that you found. So the articles are there just to kind of help you to really dig into testing and why it's important. So try to include that in your paper. So when you're out there looking for articles, try to keep this project in mind, this assignment in mind, and it'll be beneficial for you.
Hey, you want to buy a watch?